How you doing? It's Dr. Babs. So we're continuing on this midterm final project video in this here. And look at all this stuff we've done. We're not going to have necessarily a separate video for each of these. Um, these are going to kind of be together. So Python has really, it's a really great language. Sometimes it's called a scripting language, programming language. It's um, it's really taken traction a lot with people who need to do, scientific work, data work, but it's a multifunction, 360-degree language. It does um, almost anything, kind of the way that Java and even C Sharp and .NET with all their attendant libraries, it's nearly in that same category. Um, Oftentimes because um, yeah, oftentimes because of that. So um, let's talk about Python, right? So let me clear this out. Oh yeah, I got to start a new session because the last one timed out. So let's go to therobot.us. Login is me. Come here. So the Python I'm going to do, whoops. The Python I'm going to do actually will work um, on your desktop um, as well. I just think for what we're talking about, I want to make sure that Python's on here as well. So um, if we try Python 3, then we have Python, and it's reasonably up to date. It's not super up to date, um, but it's good enough, right? So let me quit out of that. If we say pip, Python, oh yeah, install, so apt-get Python pip. So let's do that. Sudo apt-get install Python pip. And it's going to want a whole bunch of stuff, as you can see, but you're going to want all that, right? So why Python? Well, here's our next step. Our next step is, if you look at the airport's data, where'd you go, airport's data? Here. We have airports, airlines, and routes, and schedules even, right? So in fact, when they say schedules, it says it's currently considering the launch of a schedule timetable data service. To register your interest, fill out this survey. So the truth is that they don't have it. They say we can create customized versions of the images you see above, and that's we're punchline. We're going to try to see if we can make that. Can we make that? The answer is yes. So how can we base that on data we find? And if you were to click on any one of these cities, how can I get some information about that? So that becomes an interesting data visualization. And so they say we don't have them, but they say people like ClearTrip or FlightStats or FlightAware. And so FlightAware is one of them, and that's going to be the subject of it. I've been a member for about 12 years now. I contribute to their ADSB network through a little Raspberry Pi device I keep in my window. So we've got some things to think about here. Um, so that's what are we doing? Why are we doing it? That's kind of where we're coming from. So let's keep this here. Let's get the flight data project showing. And I have so many windows open. It's kind of insane. What we want to do is web scraping with something called Beautiful Soup. So Beautiful Soup is, and we also want to be able to connect to the database like we just did. And so these are two things I'm going to show you. But here's Beautiful Soup in terms of something that you can install and download. Screen scraping means this. Let's go and look at what something like FlightAware is going to do, and I want to save that URL so I can get back to it briefly. If you went to FlightAware and went to live flight tracking, um, it's a beautiful piece of data, and most of this stuff is crowdsourced. So when you look at the United States, all of these icons or airplanes, they're all flying out there in the airspace right now. So you get a great sense of like where planes go and that kind of business. Um, in some places where the skies aren't as full of airplanes. Certainly, Amarillo's right in about here, so the sky's pretty full of airplanes. Plenty of airplanes. Kind of, you'll see traffic here. They're getting over to California or Vegas. You can actually see a lot of flights coming from Asia into some of the larger Texas cities. They'll come across, particularly Dallas, but sometimes Houston as well. They'll come across here as well. So, um, okay, blah blah blah. Who cares, right? Um, we can look at live flight tracking from an airport, right? And that's what our data kind of gives us, right? I don't. So this is where those codes come in handy. So Atlanta, KATL, and here we have a bunch of information. And what's kind of cool about even the version in the US, they look at this, they show you the track of these airplanes. And again, this comes somewhat from the government, but quite a bit from crowdsourcing globally, people having these devices. So you want to talk about the Internet of Things? That's a decent example. That's a very decent example of then people who will um, have lots of. Let me put this differently. This is an example of data analytics because this represents people having these devices and otherwise contributing to a network and the little things like they'll have right here in their homes, and is contributing to this real-time picture of data. I mean, this is fascinating. I love this kind of thing. I'm a bit of an aviation nerd to begin with, but I just look at all that. This is all the airplanes in the sky, what the weather is doing with them. Oh, look at that one has had to turn around because of weather, right here. This guy right here, Delta Flight 1799, which is a B7 Boeing 7112, tells you how high it is, how fast it's going, where it's come from, where it's going. That guy had to do a little U-turn here. It's obvious to get away from that weather. So just fascinating things going on here. But as much as humor me in my nerding out, the real reason this is fascinating is this is very much part and parcel to the type of class we're in. What types of business intelligence can we superimpose between these things? And we have the ability to, if you want to pay money, you have the ability to get this data. But if you at least want to see where flights are going to, and that's kind of the point, is there's a missing link. I hope I don't end up closing this whole thing. No, there's a missing link, and the fellows, the men and women at Open Flight say so as much. If you want to see schedules, they're not there yet. So how can we deal with it? And that's the data picture I'm trying to put together. And we're gonna put some others together, and this is going to be a pretty comprehensive example. So um, let's minimize that. This is what we're after. So let's take Atlanta and let's just look at who's showing up. Okay, so if I click on that, I pretty much end up having another piece of data. The site runs slow sometimes because it's still thinking about bringing it in. But I'm going to have another piece of data which will show me that, right? So what is the sort of full set of arrivals, right? So this is when the aircraft departed in its origin, when it's arriving. You notice it's giving me all times in CDT because I have it set. I am logged in. I have it set so that it's using my time zone. So if you go in here not logged in, it'll actually show you a different type of thing. So you're gonna have to do some work with that to standardize it. I'd recommend you standardize it to Universal Time Coordinated or Zulu time or Greenwich Mean Time, that kind of thing. But it'll tell us what the name of the flight is, its tail number. When you're not logged in, you don't get that data. What kind of airplane it is. And I don't think we have airplanes, but you guys will be able to get that as well. No. So we can actually add that into the mix, right? So we can get airplanes, um, where it's coming from. Clearly, it's arriving at Atlanta. So we can start to pull the dossier of this information together. Um, so so that's neat, right? I think it's extremely neat. Here's a China Cathay Pacific, yeah, from China all the way here with a fairly newer airplane. So lots of fun things going on with this data. Okay, great. Well, what are you supposed to do? They'll let you buy the history, right? But now, a caveat is that the information that they give you um, is um, available through this thing called flight XML. So flight status and flight tracking. So when you do flight status and flight tracking, um, you can get a key from them, but you can see the word billing history. It's going to cost you a low amount of money, almost the way the server is going to cost you a low amount of money. So if you use a tool like Beautiful Soup, it kind of gives you a way to do some screen scraping to help you out. Now, don't abuse it. Don't hit them all the time. And you could even try a different, like for instance, flight stats here. So you could try flight stats as well. And these people will give you, they're going to kind of have the same thing, right? They're going to have um, different APIs for you to use, and you can register for a free account, and then that's another way to do it as well. You can get a free evaluation account. I'm not sure how long that lasts. I can't remember if I actually made an account with these guys or not. Um, no, it looks like I never have. So, and maybe in a subsequent video I'll try them. But these people are going to let you look at an airport as well. Um, and so um, you can kind of put together um, these API calls, and that's something we need to look at. Um, so this is the Flight Stats Developer Center, right? But if we just go to flightstats.com, then flightstats.com is going to have a way to look for stuff just the same way, right? So they're not that different from FlightAware. If we look at tools, we can look at Flight Tracker, we can look at Airport Overview. So what airport are you interested in? I'm interested in KATL. I look for it, and they're going to give you fairly similar information. You know, we can look at departures and arrivals. So even if you get this, the question becomes the same. How can you obtain this information? And there are two ways. Um, I think for educational purposes, and I'm trying to be careful here, for educational purposes, I want you to be able to know about how to get data from screen scraping. There's going to be usually here a request, and there's going to be a terms of service that's going to say, hey, look, we want you to use the API if you really want to get um, data out of here. These guys aren't as upfront about their terms of service. Um, but if you look at this, if you right click here and view the page source, at the end of the day, because they're showing a table, there is going to be a table that you could look at. Okay, so there's a table. It's got some of the information. There's some other tables, and here's a lot of that information, right? So there's a table in here, right here, that starts all of that information you see there. So what if you could pull that out as well, is the idea. So I'm going to minimize that, and I'll end up showing you two things. I'll end up showing you this in terms of how to work with it. And here's a Python example, actually, how to work with it here where you'd have to be paying money. And I have an account, so I'll show you that. And then For educational purposes, I want to show you how you might do this to where you could use this thing called Beautiful Soup. Beautiful Soup is doing web scraping, and the idea of web scraping is that if you have, that's a decent example. Here's kind of a more of an overview here. It gives you some examples of what you might do. Um, Here's a tutorial. This tutorial is actually pretty good. Here's one as well. So they say that, look, given, and then this is like a cheat sheet for it. They're saying, given a document like this, how can we start to find pieces out of it? So I think it's a lot easier for you to learn from just by um, looking at what I'm doing here. So there's the source of FlightAware, which I've kind of used more of my life. So I'm kind of gravitating towards showing you that a bit more. Um, so it's going to create a big mass of data like that, right? A big mass of, and that's what I've been waiting on. I don't know why this site's running so slow. And there's the world, right? It's incredible. Now this is just Atlanta, right? So if you think about that data visualization, where did you go, data visualization? Oh, did I get rid of it already? Oh no, I did. Um, Open flights data. If you think about that, it's kind of your way to make that. So this is just everything they're tracking from Atlanta. There's something going off to, it's a cargo flight, something going off to Luxembourg, and something going out there to, um, it'll come back, Bermuda, and et cetera. Is anything going off to Asia? Yeah, some planes headed off towards Asia. They're not there yet. Hawaii, all these places. So here's a table that shows everything they're doing. If we go to viewing the page source, embedded in here is the table. So what I'm saying is, what if you can get that data from this? And that's what Beautiful Soup's about. Now I have um, Python here, and what you want to do then is, let me see if I can open up another one of these browsers. Yeah, this will work. Go to Python and download the latest and greatest, right? Once you download and install that, you'll have a program called idle available to you, see idle, and run that, and then you can follow along with what I'm doing. Now you're going to have to do a couple of things, and if you're on Windows, you want to know the command line, because we're gonna be told to install a few things. Like first of all, you have to install Beautiful Soup. So if you go here and you guys type in Python, if you install 3.61, you should see it there, and it tells you you have to exit like that. If you say Python m pip install Beautiful Soup, which I cannot remember. Beautiful Soup 4, that there, that command. This is from the this is from the documentation for Beautiful Soup. I already have it. Okay. You're going to get a bunch of things that are going to roll by and say, blah, 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 blah. I'm getting some stuff. Okay. So that's all you have to really remember here. So once you do that, then you guys, and you run, you go and search for and you run, and I'll just close one of these. Idle here, IDLE, it's actually, means IDE something, but it's also for Eric Idle, who was a Monty Python actor, and that's how this Guido van Rossum, which is a Dutch computer scientists made all these tools or conceived of them back in the 80s, and that's the whole backstory. And it's interesting, but then I don't want to clutter the video with it. But this is it's not the only editor. It's just the one that comes with. It comes with the tool. So if I go to recent files, I had something called findlinks.py, and it's so amazing how short this is. Um, how little, very little code. So I I did Beautiful Soup over here. I imported it, and so I can say from Beautiful Soup for import the Beautiful Soup object. Then I also want to do requests. So I think I have to do the same thing here. Pip install requests. Yep, and I've already got it. So those are the two things we're using, right? So that's kind of what I have to have. So I pick up a URL for one of these airports. Let's do KDFW. Okay, and it's just like the URL I had open here, right? You see departures airline. So KDFW departures airline. So the idea is how can and I think it's because of my ad blocking software that some of these pages take so long. It's almost like the revenge of the provider when they're saying, well, if you want to block my ads, then I'm going to confound you. And I shouldn't have a ton of ads because I'm a subscriber, but because you're going to see this page doesn't take as long to load. But there we are, right? So those are all the departures. Okay, so I think my data is going to show departures as well, and that's for Dallas Fort Worth. So look at that. We have somebody going off to the United Arab Emirates. We have something going off to um, Liège. So that's clearly to me a I'm pretty sure I'm saying that wrong, but it's clearly a cargo airline. How about in Asia? We have Beijing, Seoul, Shanghai, Tokyo, three different places in the Hawaiian Islands, and Sydney. It's amazing that you can fly straight to Sydney from Dallas. Massive airplane, the Boeing A380. So pretty cool stuff, right? Look at all the stuff emanating out of Dallas. So what does that have to do with us? Well, how can we take this table here and turn it into something? So I've installed Beautiful Soup. I've installed requests. Pause that and look at it. Perfect. So then I pretty much say, well, look, get me the URL for arrivals. And I should just call it URL because I'm going to change it over and over again. So it's kind of silly to call it both of these things. Then I want to pick up the content of that page. Now, these are all things you can look at in the documentation, but I have a couple of tutorials here, and I'm kind of thinking that those are pretty good as well. One is how do you get all the rows from a particular table using Beautiful Soup, which is something I'm demonstrating. There's a little cheat sheet of how to work with it. Here's the official documentation itself, web scraping with Beautiful Soup, more about web scraping with Beautiful Soup, kind of a very decent tutorial. I'm going to put all these together. This is a skill you need if you're going to play in this realm. No doubt. No doubt about it. This is a skill you need to be able to do this. So here's Beautiful Soup. We use the built-in HTML parser. The idea is if it's going to be looking for HTML, I'm going to get all the tables. So what I do is I find every table, and this is where you have to be able to look into the data to find it. So it turns out that this style called pretty table is a decent clue for how I'm going to find that information. You see it there? How can I find that data? And then you have to be able to pick through this. And I know it's mind-boggling, and if you feel like, oh, but I can barely program, don't run away. Don't drop the class for that reason. I mean, there could be other reasons, but don't pick that one. I'm going to supply a lot of code for you so you can kind of work with this. But we do want to get departures and arrivals. Here's the deal. We're going to want to get them on some sort of frequency. So when we build this, One of the things we have to do with this script, and I'll make that as an additional video, is we need to, instead of just print this stuff, we need to be able to actually write it off to the database. Not unlike we had the comma separated values from a previous video. So we basically have this ability to say, please look for table elements, because this is going to be looking through HTML, whose class attribute is pretty table. Not its only one, but one of them. Once I do that, then I say, for every table you find, give me all table rows. Then for every row I found, please find the table data. And then for every piece of data I found in that table data, I do two things. I go ahead and pick out the text, then I strip the text out, and then I print it out. And then you notice that Python uses indentations to differentiate control structure. So I have to say, look at every table, look at every row, look at every piece of data in the row. That's what these nested for loops mean. Now, if you just need a basic Python tutorial, I don't know, they're like a dime a dozen. They really are. In fact, I thought one of these I found was Python for beginners. Just go there, Python for beginners, right? You don't have to learn the whole language. You just have to follow along with what I'm doing in these examples. Let's get that going and that. Okay. Right. Oh, yeah, and I just wanted to show that. So I'm able to pick these out here. So let's see what it does, right? So does it run? Sure, save the source. It runs. And after a little bit of magic, look at that. And I did that. So let me explain the difference between what you see here, what you see here, and the code. So the data has actually changed, and that's the whole point of this. We want to pick this up in near real time. You can't do real time, because the truth is that they're going to want you to pay. So this is important. For educational purposes, I want you to see how this is feasible, okay? So you might have to take what I'm doing with FlightAware and see if one of those alternative sources like FlightStats, and here's why. And I'm going to go ahead and be transparent about this because I want you, this is a good example, but they know I'm logged in, A. You can see it right here, and I'm fine with that. I'm a contributor to the network. They also know that you must agree to terms of use. If you're writing a data robot or a collection agent, and we are writing that, folks, then you should use this. So I'm advocating that for your learning purposes, you play with this a bit, but long-term collection's going to have to be through their API. Their API does have a Python example. Where did you go, Python example? Oh, here. Although I'd really much rather use the REST version for Python. It's kind of a shame. Which one are they using here? API.service.enroute print result. Kind of wish this went straight to, none of these go to, say PHP, Ruby, show more flight examples. So it's funny, they show each of these. There's one with SOAP, Py, which it's not as good. Here's one with web services tools. So I'll put something together so you can kind of, excuse me, have an easier time of it. But the idea here then is I do have a key, but you're going to have to pay for this. So let's see if I log out what they say about products, flight XML. Yeah, see, I'm not logged in. You can register now. Let me see. Flight XML cost. I don't know why this wasn't easy to find from their list. Here we are. So per this is a price per query, right? So the prices per query, each class 2 query, you can see that each query almost costs as much, and they actually become cheaper the more you make, almost costs as much as um, that hosting machine, the VPSs I was talking about. So they're pretty much saying that if you made um, 8,000 calls per month, which basically making, if you made 288 calls per day, then you could be paying $70, right? Um, then you could, if they give you this other one that says you're making 2,000 per day, um, so essentially you're making 2 queries a minute. So here they're saying if your application made 2 class 2 queries every 10 minutes, then your monthly bill would be $80. So, to get this stuff and the granularity we're looking for, and I get it because it costs them money to collect. So to get the stuff for the granularity you're looking for, you're going to get into some real money. And a class 2 query is things like, where do they come from? Where do they go? En route, arrived, all this kind of stuff, right? So um, we don't want to worry about this legacy pricing, so nobody's going to use it. So basically, if we use the calculator here, um, we would have where there, so let's see there, if you did a query a minute, so there's essentially 60 queries in an hour times 24, so 1400, right? So if you did a query a minute all day, and then you say, okay, so that's um, times 30 days. So that's 43 um, 2 queries every minute. So we're half of that price, so 43. So you can almost say half of 285. So 285.12 divided by 2, $142. That's more than a textbook. So that information isn't really worth it to us. Um, and I really, for the purposes of a class like this, I'm not really going to incur that expense either. So, but it's an interesting way to see if you could do it. Now, could you put together something that, asked once a minute for a day? Well, no, they have a terms of service, and they're essentially saying, look, if you're going to run um, some kind of bot, then here we are, terms of use. If we're going to run some kind of bot, then we expect that you're going to get into the paid one. So you're not going to disguise the origin of your connection. You're not going to provide false or inaccurate information. You're not going to use it for the purposes of doing illegal activity. You're not going to spam. With the exception of Flat XML, you only access the web with an interactive web browser, not with any program or robot. So they're very clear here that other than me doing this for educational purposes, this is not something you need to be in the business of doing. In fact, we agreed to do it not once, right? You won't use it for any other thing. So they're pretty clear that, they want you to basically pay them money, right? So why am I showing you this? Well, it's because it's attached to our challenge. Our challenge is if I'm going to bring in airports, when we go back to this information here, which is open flights, and we go to that really critical ingredient of schedule, then the question becomes, well, how did you make that? And they tell you about timetables, and they say, well, um, if you're interested in that, we can get it. Open Flights can create customized versions up here, suitable for printing. We have historical data, but it's not past 2009. Some alternative uses of the data. So we have like FlightWise here, who I've never even been to or used, but it becomes the same deal. How do you end up getting this information? So we have an airport summary, and what airport do you want? KDFW, and here are information they're doing as well. So do they have the same restrictions? It's a really nice, great map they're making. Um, Flight tracking, I don't really see it, right? Aero info, find airports, weather, airport summary, forums, operations, contact, um, third-party tracking. So they're not as near as I can tell, forthright about, hey, don't do this. So here's Dallas Fort Worth. If we look at the views, the paid source here, um, here we are. Useful site for aviation related stuff. Here's a bunch of stuff. So they're not, frankly, as forthright about it. So as a result, it becomes a lot more interesting. However, I think one way they work around that, if we scroll down far enough, there we are. There's track flights. Yeah, but that's what I suspected. So it's because they actually don't have the information embedded in the page at all. This is being dynamically populated. You can kind of get a sense of that when we load the page, right? This is being dynamically populated in the DOM, right? The document object model, subsequent to um, loading the page. And that's kind of a Ajax Web 2.0 type of thing. So looking at the page source isn't really going to help you out, right? That's not, the data is not in there. So these are some of the challenges of trying to get this information um, really in a way that's free basically, and everybody wants that, and it's not really possible. So this source isn't going to cut it, right? Because they're getting this stuff from behind the scenes, and so that's not going to help. So a place like FlightWise, great, great website, not going to work. Flight Stats, what's Clear Trip is obviously airfares, flight tracking, historical data. So Flight Stats takes you straight off to the developer thing, and they're going to talk about products, and there's going to be this Flex API, and register for free, getting started, confirm account, start building, register your free evaluation account, sales team, and that's a problem. Here we are. So the pricing is free, usage based, see pricing, usage limits. Here we are. Maximum total 20,000, lifetime, max alerts. So here we are, see pricing. Um, evaluation plan usage limits. This is not bad. So evaluation um, usage limits would be we can get 20,000 all-in requests. How does it work with our calculator? Did I get rid of it already? I did. That was foolish. Um, so we can have, if we did one a minute, that's a day. Yeah, you just have an evaluation period, and the plan is for 30 days. Time, so one a minute. Um, so you're gonna bust it, right? In fact, you don't even have enough to do it that long. You can do one a minute. Sorry, Nope. You couldn't even do 2 weeks. You could relax it a bit, right? And then they're actually only going to let you get so many, you get the point, right? Otherwise, at a commercial plan, we can see um, every request you make um, has a fractional, and then once you usually get up past a certain amount, um, here we are. So historical status monthly plan, you guys can pick up stuff. So this stuff's going to cost money. And so everybody's pretty straightforward about that. You, and this is a great topic to cover in a college course, you have um, um, you need to make the decision about the ethics of pulling this data. I'm going to, in a separate video, show you the API way. I will be incurring some money, and then we're going to talk about, well, what do you want to do to be able to pull this stuff in real time? And so you just need to understand kind of the options. So this thing here, um, running, this example program I ran here, does go off and scrape. And I'm making it very clear in this video to, it's between me and you as the student, but they're asking us not to do this, right? They're saying, please use our service. So if we wanted, other than to understand the possibilities of screen scraping, because you guys can see here, if you look at the table, so let's actually kind of do that so I can wrap this up. Then I'm going to talk about talking to the database, and then I'm going to cut this video off. But if you look here at the departures, and you can see that now that I'm logged off, it cuts me off. I don't see nearly as many. Um, but if you look at these departures here and look at the results of the code, so the actual output of the code, then I pretty much have that information, right? So there's the identity of the aircraft. Here is the aircraft type. Here's where it came from. So look how many more flights have gone into the system since we last did this poll earlier in the video. It came from, I'm sorry, yeah, it came from um, Easterwood Field. Where is that? I was hoping it would hover, but oh, College Station. Okay, so it came from College Station right here in Texas. And we can see the times that it um, left at 1:19 um, Central there in Easterwood Field, and it's set to arrive. And with that, we can start to put together quite a bit of data here. Now, we don't have all this real-time data that they're showing here, which is really nice, but we can start to put together more information. And then when they actually arrive, that's actually a different table altogether. If we went to KATL here, I just got rid of that part of the URL, then we would have arrivals are kind of like planes being tracked, where en route scheduled are they're actually having they're kind of they're being tracked in real time. You can see that what they do is say en route, and so it's ones that um, they know are actually headed towards. And so these are kind of estimates. So these are different, and I would just use arrivals and departures to make it simple. So anyway, um, beautiful soup, Python, some things to look into. I will follow this up. So I've got some of these here, and I'll put each of these links into the main master file, and I'll put this whole master file up once the videos. I'm done making these videos for this midterm project. So we need, the point is we need some way to get this stuff in there. So let's do one last part here. And what I mean by stuff to get in there is that if we go here, we have our database, right? And so the idea becomes, well, how are we going to get information? So if I have from open flights, where'd you go, open flights? So if I have the airports and the airlines and the routes, then the idea would be, well, then how can we actually see who's flying on the route, who's actually doing it? So this gives us the opportunity to get real data from an airplane that actually flew. So they're saying here that British Airways Flight 1355 flies to Singapore, it leaves at that time, or all that kind of jazz. What do they say here? This is airline. Um, oh, it's the airline ID. I'm sorry. These are all IDs. Airline, source airport, destination airport, code share, yes or no, how many stops, etc. Then we can pull in this other information that actually becomes a lot more factual. Now, where we're headed with this, and so it's one last bit of Python. So this whole video is really supposed to be about things you need to do in Python. There's one more thing to this, and that is, let me go ahead and close this guy. Yeah. Oops, that closed the whole thing. Ah, well. Idle. Nope. Nope. Idle. Here we can go to, how about I open recent? And I've got one that then talks to that database that we put together from a couple of videos ago. So then what can you do in Python to work with the database? So same deal here. We want to do Python im pip install MySQL, and it's pretty much saying, hey, my friend, I've already done this, and I say, okay, that's outstanding. Then we can run a program like this and see that we're actually able to talk to our database. And if we want some proof that that's really our database, let's look at home plate here for the database. And it says the database version is 5.7.18, 0 Ubuntu 0. Look at that match. There. So that code, which I'll show briefly, talks about connecting to the database. So you put in these credentials. Where do you want to go? Who are you? What's your password? What table do you want to talk to? You have to get this cursor so you can move around. I execute a select statement, a query. I go ahead and fetch at least one record from it, and then I show it. Now I've got some tutorials out on that. In fact, this one's really outstanding. It's from Tutorials Point, and it's MySQL database access, and I think it has just about everything you need. It's got CRUD statements, so I'm going to put this over more in my Python stack of things to make sure you look into. That one's not important. Good. So I have kind of that for you. So I'm leaving you some things to look through tutorials, and I'm going to give you a couple of things to do with this data. So the next video will show you the API way. The trial account for flight stats looks like it's probably a little bit more promising. I would say maybe to max that out. I've shown you some screen scraping, but we would just want some light coverage, probably a week's worth. We could spread it out every 5 minutes. You guys noticed that for a busy airport, though, like Atlanta Hartsfield, a whole lot happens in 5 minutes. Let me actually log back in. A whole lot happens in 5 minutes, so that if I were to go to live flight tracking and look at an airport, no, I don't want a random airport. It loaded pretty quickly though. Well, look, it's O'Hare though. That's not bad. So if I want to look at the arrivals, um, I'm telling you that just from data read to data read, you're going to end up losing a lot of data. Now we're going to have other problems in terms of what do you do with repeating records, and so there's going to be all kinds of other data cleaning things. But that's the difference between when we have operational systems versus stuff for warehousing. So what we can do is bring in records in at different timestamps and then reconcile to see if it's the same flight. If it's the same flight, then we'll effectively, when we go over to the data um, warehouse or mart, we'll actually reduce that redundancy because we're not getting position stuff here. This is just saying this is who's in the air and coming in. If we use the APIs, we're actually getting position stuff. So those are some things to think about. I'll have each of these there. I'm going to cut this one off now because I think we kind of made the point. So if we look in the progress, what we've done is we've talked about installing Python. Now, except for not on the server, but that's not a big deal because Python is there. Oh, and I've lost connection again. It's because I keep on letting it go idle. Let's make a new session to robot. Jeff. Oh, I know that's going to be a failure. Yep, it's still going to be a failure. I have like this calisthenics I have to do. Okay, let's go here. Change settings. Go to this guy. Go to here and do it. I think I've lost my connection to the Slack as well. I just got a message here that says um, here. Didn't see it. I think it's because I do have it running. Okay. So where are we at? Yeah, I've got this guy going. And last thing is that is Python there? And it is. And so if we say Python 3, because they both exist, oops, that's actually on a, when you're having them like both installed, you actually have to do that. So let's exit out of here. Let's run both of our scripts on here, okay, just to kind of for giggles, right? Here I am in my own area. So what I'll do is I'll say sudo nano, and let me open up my idle again. Oh, I did the same stupid thing. Idle. And let me open up my most recent file. So one of my files was called findlinks.py. So what I'm going to do is make a file called findlinks.py. Yep. Go on in there. I'm just going to drop this in. Okay, I'm going to copy that out and drop that on in. And what's kind of cool is that there's some this syntax highlighting because, oh yeah, because it thinks that's a comment. That's a problem with the syntax highlighting. It's not going to be a problem with the code. So I go and save this. So I have that file. Now we have to do our pip, and we might have to do pip3. Let's see if pip3 actually works. Oh, look at that. Sudo apt-get install python 3 pip, because all this is done in Python 3, and there's a big dichotomy between Python 2 and 3, and it's not worth getting into. But these days, if we're going to start something, we're going to start it with 3 here. Okay, great. So I have that. So what are some of the other things we had actually installed? We had done Beautiful Soup, right? Um, oh, here we are. Hold on, I'm responding to one of you. Um, okay. Anyway, uh, what I'm trying to say to you is that let's go put these things in that we were doing, right? So for instance, our beautiful soup. So if we go back to the beautiful soup documentation, where did you go? Beautiful soup documentation. They say do this pip install beautiful soup 4, right? So if we go to our machine here, let's see if pip3 is working. Pip3 works, yay. Might have to sudo it, you never know. Pip3, put that bad boy in. Put beautiful soup 4 in. I don't know that I really care. Oh, okay. How about pip3? How about sudo pip3 install upgrade pip3, I guess. I hope. Oh, great. You just want me to do pip? Oh, yeah. Look at that. Yay. Anyway, did it get the beautiful soup in there? It did. We had the requests, if you guys recall. It's going to go get all that fun stuff it needs. And then what do we have? We had PY/MySQL. Yay. Okay. So then we have that find links. Now, one thing you have to do is you have to make it so it's executable. So, I mean, it's not actually entirely necessary because we would just say Python 3 find links and it'll run it. And there it is. See that? Remember that from the desktop? What's the utility here? Well, you need such a thing to run on your server as well, right? Um, and then how about the database one? So the database one I called, no, I don't want the shell. I have a lot of shells open. Here it is, testDB. Let's grab all that. Come in here, clear the screen. Sudo nano testdb.py. Remember, right click, paste things in nano, actually just in the Linux through putty in general. So I want to write it out, clear. Let's look at the listing. There we have testdb, Python 3 testdb.py, and there it shows you the database. So these need to be able to run on the server as well. And so now to finish this yet another long video up, and it leaves us kind of with this last stuff, the FlightAware API, the Wikipedia screen scrape, connecting Tableau to MySQL. So did we do install Python? Yes. Did we test Python and MySQL? Yes. Did we discuss Beautiful Soup and FlightAware and the terms of use caveat, which means we cannot have an operational system that scrapes this way. But other websites, if they don't explicitly prohibit it, these people are using pretty important legal language, and we should honor that. You know, I certainly couldn't say otherwise, nor do I feel otherwise. But how can you script the screen scraping? And I have the script for you to look at. I'll make sure that they're both included in the materials I put up there. So we actually pretty much in one video, although it's long, have part 3 done. Then I'll do some final topics. I'll do FlightAware, and maybe I'll do flight stats. I don't have an account with them, but I can try it. Then we can talk about how we can get some information off of Wikipedia. And then lastly, now that we have all of this data together, how can we actually plug back to Tableau with it? So good deal. Thanks for your patience, and I'll get this and the other videos I recorded up to you quite soon. Take care.